Quickly. Following chaotic scenes last night, the results of the hotly contested ANC Eastern Cape elections are out. 946 delegates cast their votes of the 1,706 others, which calculates to 55% of the total. This as the Maswale camp had absented themselves from the process. There are reports that the disgruntled group has challenged the outcomes of the elective conference, of course that in the form of a court case. And of course, for the just to recap, for the position of chairperson, sitting chair Phumulo Maswale lost badly, polling just 7 votes against 935 for the provincial chair, Oscar Mabuyane. And of course, Mlungisi Mboko is the new deputy chair with 932 votes. Sakumzi Somyo lost with 5 votes. And of course, yeah, that's the situation we have been watching there. This acrimony that left 8 delegates injured as the situation spiraled out of control. Following calls for the division of the House, some delegates reportedly went violent and started throwing chairs. Ambulances were seen carrying injured delegates and some were being treated on the spot. Speaking to NN7, the delegate said that there were changes done in the list of the names and that voting rolls were tampered with. This followed another commotion when angry members tried to forcefully enter the complex where the conference was being held. Stun grenades were fired to disperse them.
Remember, from the first day of the conference, especially during the registration period, as a PEC we have received a number of complaints who are coming from the structures of the ANC, were supposed to be part and parcel of the conference, were supposed to be accredited. But they found out yesterday that there are people who are inside the conference who are participating as people who are coming from their branches whilst they are outside. That's the outcry which is there. That's why we have mandated a team of NEC as a PEC that must be able to clean.
And of course, as I said, joining me in studio is Sifiso Mahlangu. He is a group political editor for NN7 and for the New Age newspaper. And he joins me in studio now after a very momentous development in the Eastern Cape. And I'm just wondering, what is your take on how it's all unfolded?
Good afternoon, Mr. Williams, and good afternoon to all the viewers of ANN7 TV, a cantankerous moment in South African politics. I've never known the Eastern Cape to be particularly violent during the election season, but violence was visible yesterday. You know, bloodstains on the floor, many people injured, pictures going viral of some delegates having been injured through some assaults of chairs being thrown in the air and things like that. And I don't think that's the sort of thing you expect from leadership, even if it is at a provincial level. But this is a silly season. It is sometimes a very hostile season for politics. Some people were beaten 5 to 935 votes. That's a drastic measurement. However, the votes are out. But I think what applies my mind is that there might be a court action against the winning camp.
Let's just remember that of the 942 delegates that voted, out of 1,706, so they constitute only 55%.
Yeah.
So what does it say significantly about these outcomes? That this is indeed a split province?
Well, it means in the first place that the faction that left, or the group that left, would have changed the number game.
That is the one of Phumulo Maswale.
Yes, they would have really changed the number game, but having all left, they led Phumulo to only 7 votes. I mean, 7 almost out of 1,000 votes. One would think that's laughable, but it really happened. So they should have stayed and cast their right and voted, but they didn't. So if you stage a walkout, you don't vote.
But if they had stayed, it would then legitimize a process that they were opposed to.
It would have legitimized the process because, Mr. Williams, if you're not there, you cannot argue with the vote. You cannot say the vote should have been like this because you absented yourself from the vote. You avoided it, and for that matter, those that vote, their votes must be counted. I think with the IEC having audited this process, it seems to me like it was fairly legal. However, it being very political means that the outcomes of this election might be contested in court, which puts us to another debate. I think that we've got to introduce to the conversation the fact that the elective conference is in December. If there's trouble, court challenges in the Free State, now there might be possibly court challenges tomorrow morning in the Eastern Cape. We do know that there's court challenges in KZN. All you need is one other province possibly to have court challenges. They would have to postpone the national elective conference, because you can't have 4 out of 9 or 5 out of 9 provinces still in court over the PEC, and you want to have an NEC, a National Elective Conference. The people who are supposed to be the voting delegates in the elective conference will find themselves in court. So who will be there voting? Of course, this is about slate mechanisms and factions within the ruling party. But if they don't get the act together, and I think if the National Executive Committee doesn't deploy task teams, to get the right measurements according to the ANC constitution,
just when we come back,
they might have to postpone this conference.
I want us to return when we come back, but I'm in East London, where Khulufelo Sitlachile has been tracking the disgruntled camp that has gone to hold its own press conference. And of course, Khulu, please do tell us what is happening where you are at the moment. Do you see the group, the disgruntled group?
Good afternoon, Buntu, and the viewers at home. In quite an interesting turn of events, at the time, on the very day that the Eastern Cape PEC conference election nomination results were supposed to be released, the other camp, as would be, has decided to convene their own conference, arguing that the authenticity of that particular conference is in question, largely because of a number of reasons. So firstly, they don't believe that the numbers match the true reflection of the delegates that were supposed to be within that conference. So they're saying that while the venue, the ICC venue, can cater for a maximum of 20,000 people, 2,000 people rather, the delegates that were supposed to be within that the venue were supposed to be 1,000. And now, with the absence of guests and media, the capacity was pegged to capacity. That is questionable, and this is what they're arguing. They're arguing that if there are only 1,000 possible delegates that can vote, how is it that the venue was packed? But beyond that, they're also arguing that the NEC has not been impartial in this regard, in a sense that they believe that Oscar's camp has been given a lot of favor, and that he might have possibly, messed with the processes to getting his people to come into the venue and sort of be part of the delegation, even though they were not allowed to be, even though rather they are not voting delegates. So they're convening here, and they're going to, it seems like they're going to be having their own conference, and they've started with a registration process that involves the delegates producing their tags as well as their IDs, because as you will remember from yesterday, one of the main pointers that led to the people, particularly Phumelo Maswale's camp, leaving the conference was because they believed that the auditing process was not authentic, as some of the delegates, as they were being led into the conference arena, as they were being on the roll call, as they were being led in, some of the delegates noticed that their names did not correlate with their ID numbers, so there may have been some tampering in that regard. So what they've decided to do on this side at the city hall in the middle of the city is have a convener conference, but also go through a registration process that correlates the names with the ID numbers, as well as to check whether the delegates are allowed to vote. So what they're trying to do is to have their own conferences. They don't believe that the one that has convened at the ICC is authentic and is not biased.
Khulufelo Sitlachile, my colleague in East London, being with the faction that has chosen to abandon the conference that's elected the leadership. You see now on our screens with, of course, Oscar Mabuyane, there's chairperson replacing Phumulo Maswale, who was the chairperson and, of course, premier of the province. What this means basically is Mabuyane could well be the premier should things stay the way they do if the ANC also retains the province in 2019. And Khulufelo has just given us a very good and very distinct distinct idea of what the disputes are all about in terms of the numbers, in terms of the delegates, and in terms of how the sitting in the hall has been arranged as far as the other party alleges. So now, whilst they are pondering the small matter of a court application, they are also trying to legitimize a parallel process of staging their own conference. That explains why you were seeing numbers at 931, 935 votes, wins by some of the candidates here, because it was only 55% of the vote. So it really puts a perspective to how deeply divided the situation remains, and pretty fragile in the Eastern Cape. And of course, with me is still as Fiso Mahlangu, who is the group political editor for ANN7 and for the New Age newspaper. You have to check the New Age because it really does put some incisive opinions, and you'll begin to understand just now quite how well he's got this thing distilled. Please tell me again how the ANC failed to actually manage the process. I mean, the admin issues have plagued just about every provincial conference in the run-up to this year's national conference. How do we mess up an administration issue?
Well, it might be an administrative issue, but it also might be a very congruent political strategy. I think from the dawn of ballot paper politicking, it has been an adventure and it has been an exercise that particular factions used to say, if I think I'm going to lose an election, I have to cry foul and say, there's been some tampering there, right, just to destabilize the conference so election does not happen. And it often plays itself out, and I think the results are somewhat proof of that. I don't think that every election has been tampered with, although it is possible in some instances. I do believe that these elections have been audited, they've been visited by overseers, and we know and believe that the IEC plays a very, good and a very bishopric role in seeing that elections proceed fairly and independently in this country. But because of factionalism, and factions are very strong in the ANC right now, it often happens that the wars begin even before the election. If it was just about the ballot box, why were people fighting before they got to the election venue? Why was there hostility before the speakers even started? Before the opening speaker declared the conference open, there was already a lot of animosity because of the work of factions. So it's not just admin work that I think is the challenge here. It's the fact that there is an elective conference that is ahead of the ANC that is coming in December. And whoever wins this race has got a very strong grasp of the party and what the ANC will represent in Johannesburg, what the Eastern Cape will represent in Johannesburg. If Phumulo is aligned to a certain faction, maybe say the NDZ faction or the CR17 faction, it is popular knowledge in the ANC that he'd have a lot of backing from particular branches in the Eastern Cape, and that might just be the vote that makes Mr. Ramaphosa win or NDZ win or whoever the candidate is. So it's not just about what happens in the Eastern Cape today. It's got a lot to do with the elective conference. Who you elect today will represent you in December. So you have to almost elect a secondary leader. It's almost like people are electing NDZ ahead of turn or electing Cyril Ramaphosa before the actual election. It's sort of like a proxy leading up to December. And that's why it makes it so cantankerous. It makes it so hostile because the guns and knives are out. And it seems almost literally as well, because people are even ready to throttle each other just to make their preferred candidate run to the finish line of the ANC's elective conference.
There have always been factions in the ANC. I think we'll be remiss not to actually state it as it is. We have seen that in Polokwane, for example, and we know how intensely contested was 2012, and we know what happened when the ANC first came into the country, and it was Tambo, it was Mandela, and there were all the other positions, and who should be there, and so on. But I mean, essentially, what makes it so different this time is why factionalism has been so intense in the ANC.
I think this time is maybe belittling because there's an introduction of radical economic transformation. And it seemed that the ANC was united when it did not discuss land. The ANC was united when it did not discuss economic reformation and economic transformation, radically even. The ANC seemed united when it did not want to empower black people. But now that that mark is on the table, the ANC is divided. I mean, you couldn't believe that the ANC is divided over which group in this country holds the economy. And a part of the ANC was sort of in denial about the term white monopoly capital.
I heard people say no such exists.
So some people came and said, you know, the term white monopoly capital was created by a UK-based PR firm.
Right.
And it is the very ANC that is aware of it. The factions in the ANC grow very deeply. You remember that in '69 they had to exercise what we know as the Morogoro anointing, when they had to go into a country, the country of Tanzania, and try to unite the factions and vote there for an ANC leadership, because it was, you know, breaking itself from within.
They also fired the ANC 8, or the guys that also tried to divide the ANC.
They excommunicated the ANC 8 and really let them go, you know, to say it's better we just amputate you from the party than come and eat us from within. So what is happening in the party is not new, and perhaps the way they deal with it is very internal and very, you know, democratic and very
so what's changed is the
ANC
agenda.
culture-like.
What has
but what has changed is that the agenda is different. I think if land was not on the table,
if
and
economic
if radical
economic
transformation was not on the table, the ANC would not have a problem now. But it is sort of the discussions, the agenda, and the consensus that have gotten South Africans so hot under the collar that make a portion of the ANC very resistant to change, and it makes another portion of the ANC very radical to change the agenda and the presbytery to which the country is running by. And so you get a part of the ANC that are saying, leave things as they are, because we are the problem of, you know, we've been corrupt, you know, we've captured the state, let's elect a leadership that will harness big business, and they are sending that narrative. And then you get a part of the ANC that has said, these have been the promises that we've made to our people pre-1994, and it's time to make deliverables on issues of land, on issues of transformation, and issues of economic transformation, economic empowerment in this country. And it's almost like it's one thing that has divided the ANC and made it eat each other. However, this is also a game of politics. It does serve capitalism very well when a ruling party eats itself. It does serve the opposition very well when the ANC needs no action from you to destroy it. They can do it all by themselves. So it's also a mind game. It's also very political. And because it's very position mongering, any election has got money. You know, there's always envelopes flying. There's always positions in government. There's always positions in the state, because with a position comes a lot of power. And so people become very iconoclastic. People become very egocentric about it and say, well, I want that position for me because it's about my future. And it's not because of the future of the republic. It becomes a game to which many develop themselves and their political future.
But looking at this, how does the ANC, you know, some have been saying, yeah, we're seeing all of this, we see all this intensity, this extremism that's taking place, this factionalism in the organization. The ANC can self-correct, you know. So what key steps can the ANC begin to take now?
I think from a political analysis sort of view, the ANC moves every 5 years into slate politics, and the losing slate often quits politics or becomes you know, very disgruntled, and that often splits the party. You remember with COPE, the EFF is not such a good example because they were a group that was cast out or excommunicated from the party. You know, you get other groups from time to time that have left, even such as the UDM. Many of those groups have not become very great parties, but there might be a group in December that loses, and then things we can do with an independent party. We can start our own party and we can push it and become bigger. And so the slate politics of saying there are two groups, and these are our slates, and you promise people to say, hey, if I win, you're going to be chair, you're going to be SG.
So this
sort of gives people an identification that if we don't win, we can go elsewhere. What I think should have been done is a consolidated slate where the NEC, along with the branches, says, who do you want? And they take a group to the elective conference
and formalize
it. That would have been the best thing. But to run it like a campaign where people go head to head at each other and you call yourselves the children of one father in the year of unity, the year of Oliver Tambo, destroys the very unity that they perpetuate.
But it's very strange because the ANC is aware of these things and, you know, that they could have done this. But I think that's the depth of factionalism in the organization, to the extent that people who perhaps should not be pronouncing on things have made statements about which delegates, you know, or members' rights are to support who. But having said that, if we're saying that they could have come with one slate and that they would have empowered the provinces and the branches and the regions, of course, by their very participation in that process. Let's say that has happened, and now we have to move forward. Now, going to December, you have 4 provinces that have got pending court cases of sorts. It's a rather untenable situation, isn't it?
Yeah, if the province of the Free State does, you know, put its money where its mouth is and goes to court, or certain individuals within the ANC in the province go to court, it will put the party into a lot of trouble, because I think at that point you'll have just about 3 or 4 court cases that are pending for the PECs until now. If that continues, they might have to look into a postponement of the elective conference, because, you know, the provinces have not spoken. However, the ANC is considered to be a broad church and a church of the branches. So whether or not the PEC decides, the other alternative is that the branches can go alternatively, because the branches have, you know, branch chairs and that sort of thing. But that is a situation where the ANC constitution will have to be vetted out. You know, they've got to really apply the constitution. I don't believe that there's time for that. People are too busy campaigning, and because the gift of politics is also, you know, the curse of politics, because people are very individual, you know, because it's something that appeals to people who are often very well spoken, who are very flamboyant, and people who consider themselves as stainless. So it becomes a very brutal game, because even brother turns against brother. It is the game of politics, and it is in such a year, in 2017, that we see many replays of Polokwane, many replays of Mangaung. It's not anything that is different. But I think in this year, because the land issue has been put into the focus, because issues of white monopoly capital and issues of transformation have been brought into the spotlight, the stakes are higher. And because we've got candidates who, you know, Mr. Ramaphosa himself, he's been an SG, he, you know, is a man who drafted a large part of the constitution, he's been with several unions, a very wealthy businessman. You've got Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, a doctor by profession, a former you know, now an NEC member, now she's a member of parliament again. She, out of the 22 years of our democracy, almost 16 of those years she spent as a minister and an MP. Now the stakes are higher, because you're not electing somebody from the village who simply says, I've got a plan. You're talking about really seasoned leaders of the ANC now coming head to head.
What's a proverb? It's the grass that suffers when 2 elephant bulls fight. Let me ask another one. And I'm saying this with proper recognition that me and my aspirations right now, you know, if I'm looking at the ANC, I'm probably the sacrificial lamb. But let me ask you again. As we go towards December, now the ANC provinces are having this, you know, struggle within themselves, and this infighting, this factionalism is all clear. What's in it for the opposition?
The opposition is always the winner when the 2 elephants fight. The opposition is always the winner when the party purges itself from within. When the party eats itself from within, many writers said nobody can remove President Jacob Zuma from the ANC, only Zuma could remove Zuma. And was it Enoch Sontonga who said no one can destroy the ANC? It will be the ANC that destroys the ANC. So you find that this mammoth task of this mammoth party has come into the spotlight, and its children eat from it, as you know, as the African proverb goes. And so the opposition lies and has to pick up the tasks, and often it goes to the media and goes to its conferences and outlines the disadvantages and the weaknesses of the ruling party to say, unlike the ANC, we will not do this and we will not do
What's
that.
on Straight Talk tonight? What's on Straight Talk tonight? Last question.
Well, tonight on Straight Talk is Minister of Mineral Resources, Mr. Mosebenzi Zwane, and no question is barred. We talk about mines, we talk about what happened at Marikana and who is to blame. We talk about the mining charter, if he has rescinded the mining charter. We talk about zamazamas, those people who go out and get the gold illegally from mines. What should happen with the gold and what should happen with the money. And a TNA expose, the New Age expose, which went underground, and two of our reporters spent time capturing the zamazamas and finding out and giving us footage. And we handed to him, and I asked the minister to give us the straight talk on what's happening with the mining charter and radical economic transformation in the mining sector.
Sounds pretty interesting, and I hope you have a promo for this, so our viewers can be watching, your readers can also check.
Well, it's 7 p.m. tonight
well.
on this channel, channel 405.
So have a promo. Let's just keep it going.